All right, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome to the Ramon Preston Show. This is the day that the Lord has made. We are rejoicing and we are glad in it. Happy Tuesday. If you're coming on, joining me live during this beautiful 12 o'clock noon hour, at least for those of us on the East Coast, it's 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time. If you're joining me live, I want you to put in the comments what city you are watching us from. Welcome to the Ramon Preston Show. I'm your host, Ramon Preston. My squad and I, we are live today right here in the beautiful Buckhead community of Atlanta. Today is Tuesday, July the 9th, and we're going to be talking about the 3 layers to a holding company. So all of you solopreneurs, independent contractors, small business owners, if you're self-employed, if you're a W-2 employee preparing to become a business owner, I talk a lot about holding companies because I want you to properly set up your entity structure in a way that gives you all the freedom, all the flexibility, all the leverage that you can possibly use to continue to grow and expand and get to where you want to be. So again, welcome to the show. Put in the comments what city, what state, maybe a country you're watching us from. I want to say thank you to all of you that continue to watch the Ramon Preston Show, all of you that continue to support our social media platforms, particularly our YouTube page. Of course, I appreciate Facebook, Instagram, all of you that follow us on X, LinkedIn, but YouTube is by far one of the most impactful social media channels that we have. We are pushing towards 13,000 subscribers. Of course, I would love for you to subscribe to our YouTube page. Any platform that you're on, all you have to do is type in the search Ramon Preston, and that's where you will find me. So welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 layers to a holding company. The 3 layers to a holding company. So if you're taking notes, I want you to write these 3 layers down, and then we'll kind of get into some of the details of them. If at any point you have a question, don't hesitate to put the question in the comments. My squad, they will circle back around and make sure that we can answer that question. If for some reason we don't answer the question during the live, guess what? We'll come back tomorrow or someday and we'll answer the question. So again, today we're talking about the 3 layers to a holding company. All right. The first layer is the parent. That's the first layer to a holding company. All right. The second layer is the division. And then the third layer to a holding company is the subsidiary. Now, I'm using the term holding company not to mean that a holding company, a single entity, literally has separate entities. A subsidiary is a separate entity, but I'm using the term holding company to generalize how it should be layered and what should be connected to it so that you can maximize its value and its potential. All right. So again, if you're taking notes, layer number 1 is the parent. Layer number 2 is the division. Layer number 3 is the subsidiary. So let me begin so that you won't get lost in the sauce and think that I'm saying a subsidiary is a holding company. I'm just saying to you that there are 3 layers to this type of infrastructure that you set up using the concept of the holding company. So the reason why I'm saying that the parent is the first layer, because when you're setting up a holding company, most likely it will be an LLC. This will be LLC number 1. Okay? This will be the parent company. Why is it the parent company? Because it is the company that you, as the owner, will stand or sit on top of, managing all the activities and all the businesses that it will subsequently own. So this is traditionally known as the parent company. Now, there are many companies that you might have come to mind that are considered holding companies. Even if they don't use the term holding company, they might use the term the parent company or the umbrella company. Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, insurance companies, Berkshire Hathaway, Walton Enterprises. These are all parent companies, or in other words, they're holding companies because they are the main entities that hold all of the other assets and ownership interests and businesses under it. So that's considered the parent, all right? It is the one that gives birth to all the other ideas, to all the other businesses and activities. The second layer is the division. Now, this is probably a little controversial, and maybe, you know, it may be something that a lot of people don't ascribe to, because when you have a division, and I make the circles to symbolize the division, but when you have a division inside of your holding company, sometimes that can be controversial, because most people, they think that the holding company has one single purpose, all right? So if you were to ask someone who knows anything about a holding company, what is the purpose of a holding company, they will probably tell you that the only purpose of a holding company is to hold assets. I don't personally believe that, especially when you're a solopreneur, you're a small business owner, maybe you're like me on the come up. Now, of course, if you done came up, if you have resources and money and the capability to afford not doing it this way, you don't have to start it this way. I didn't have that I didn't have the resources, I didn't have the capability in terms of finances and resources, so I had to get creative with my holding company to minimize costs. So that means I had to understand that the only purpose of my holding company could have been, in a perfect world, to hold assets, but I had to see it as the primary purpose. Okay? There's a big difference between primary purpose and only purpose, all right? So the primary purpose of my holding company, LLC number one, is to hold ownership interests of other businesses, to hold assets, intellectual property, and anything that has value, that's not risky, that's not volatile, you know. However, when I first started to build my enterprise using a holding company, I didn't have the financial resources, and I wanted to minimize my costs and my administrative operations. So there were certain things that I ran through my holding company. Now, these were not things that I considered to be risky and volatile. For example, I wasn't running a trucking business through my holding company. I wasn't running a real estate fix and flip business through my holding company. I wasn't running a landscaping business through my holding company. I wasn't running a window washing or car washing business through my holding company. Why? Because I would consider those to be highly volatile and too risky to put inside of my holding company, even though when I first got started, I didn't have any of the assets. So one of the reasons why you don't put certain businesses or business activity inside your holding company, because you don't want to expose your other assets. But most of us, when we're first getting started and you set up your holding company, LLC number one, you ain't got nothing in it. You ain't got no intellectual assets. You ain't got no copyrights, no trademarks, no publishing rights, no royalties. You ain't got nothing. So it ain't nothing you risking. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse to not set up other businesses if you know these are volatile and risky. But what I'm saying is there is a place for the division where you can have certain operational activities going on. So for example, when LLC number one was set up by me, Ramon Preston Enterprises, LLC, I structured it as a holding company because my idea was to use the holding company concept as the parent company so that at some point when I did have assets that had value, when I did have other businesses, the ownership interests of those businesses and the ownership of those assets could be held inside of my holding company. But when I first got started, I needed to make money. And I didn't have a whole lot of operational businesses and copyrights and trademarks and all this stuff. So I had to build some momentum. I had to make money. And so what I decided to do was I decided to take my consulting, I decided to take my coaching, and I decided to take my education. This is all intellectual assets. This is all the stuff that I got in my brain. This is my ability to speak and communicate and work with people. So I took these intellectual assets, I took my abilities and skill sets, and I packaged them in the form of consulting services, coaching and mentorship programs, educational courses, and I used these as divisions inside of my holding company. Now again, that there is a risk because a client could potentially sue me. But at the time I first did this, I didn't have anything inside of my holding company that was worth nothing. So nobody wouldn't get nothing anyway if they sued and won a lawsuit. You're only getting a LLC that's set up as a holding company, but it ain't got nothing. I hope y'all understanding what I'm saying. But what it did give me was the leverage so that I could build some momentum. And I just used these as divisions, but they were really products or services that I was offering. Now, what I did to buffer that and to mitigate my risk was I just got enough insurance. There's insurance that you can buy. You can buy, of course, umbrella insurance, general liability insurance, but there's also professional insurance. So I have this insurance for my ministry to cover me and ministers at my church who minister, because you can get insurance to cover what you say to people. So as a consultant, coach, and educator, I just got enough insurance to cover a potential lawsuit if somebody bumped their head and felt like they wanted to come against me for something. But at least that gave me the ability to not have to set up 3 separate entities, to have 3 separate QuickBooks accounts and 3 separate bank accounts and all these operational procedures for separate companies. These all were just divisions. So that's the power of a division, again, when you're on the come up. Now, as you grow, just like for me, my company is continuing to grow. So guess what I'm doing? I'm starting to take certain components that were divisions and I'm starting to separate them so that they can become their own entities outside of my holding company, because I'm starting to accumulate other assets inside of my holding company that have more value that outweighs the risk of this division. I hope what I'm saying is making sense. Now, if you learn these techniques and strategies, again, some people may disagree. It's worked for me. I'm not going to say it will work for everybody because I don't know what your risk tolerance is. I don't know if you have a solid plan that you're putting together to get where you need to go so that you can start separating some of these divisions. But that's what a division is. And then you have the subsidiary. The subsidiary is the third layer to a holding company. And these are literally separate entities. So these would be separate LLCs. But again, when you get to subsidiary, the layer of a subsidiary, you should have a separate QuickBooks account, separate bank accounts. You don't necessarily have to have a separate CRM. Like for me, I have one CRM. I have one project management software that I use, and I just have different boards or workspaces inside of that platform to represent separate divisions and separate subsidiaries. So when it comes to the systems and processes side of this complex structure, I'll talk about that another time. You can consolidate it and condense it down to just maybe one. You're probably going to have at least 2 or 3. You can definitely do it with at least 2 different systems and processes for your platforms. But these are the 3 layers to a holding company. The parent, that's LLC number 1, the division. And again, when you set up divisions, I like to tell people your divisions should be baby businesses that at some point when they grow up, they'll become businesses. And what I've seen a lot of my students and clients do is they followed my instruction. They created a division. They used that division to see if they could sell the product and the service. And if it became something, they set up a separate entity. If it didn't, they didn't set up a separate entity. A lot of entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs who don't understand certain business concepts, they'll just have an idea for like 10 different things, and then they'll create a holding company, LLC number 1, and then they'll create 9 different LLCs for the 9 different things that they want to do. 7 of them could have been divisions because they were still doing research and development. They didn't have a proof of concept. They didn't have a unique selling proposition. They didn't think about any of those things, and they could have worked those things out if they were divisions and minimize the cost, minimize the administrative responsibilities, minimize the chaos and the clutter in their mind, and they could have got further quicker. So hopefully I made sense to you regarding the importance of these 3 layers to a holding company. 3 layers to a holding company. Yep, that's it, Kendrell. So this is very important. And for all of you that are on the come up, again, even though I might talk about a lot of high-level, sophisticated concepts and principles, I want you to keep in mind, I started my holding company, Ramon Preston Enterprises, with no products and services to sell outside of my business to provide a service as a consultant, as a coach, and as an educator, if that makes sense to you, okay? So because I understood this concept, the parent, the division, the subsidiary, it gave me the ability to take these business activities and house them inside of my holding company as divisions or use them as products and services that I offered, therefore allowing my holding company, Ramon Preston Enterprises, to be structured as a holding company on paper, but I was able to, and I still do it, market it as a consulting, coaching, and educational company. You see how that works? So again, I have a lot of courses and workshops and content that I teach in depth on these concepts and principles, but I wanted to at least give you enough so that you can start wrapping your mind around how powerful and how important the holding company is and the 3 layers that make up that concept, okay? So if you have a main LLC, that main LLC is the parent, all right? If you have certain operational divisions or departments, or maybe like a supermarket, when you walk in the door of a supermarket, you got 20 aisles. So these would be considered like aisles in my store. So when you walk into the store of Ramon Preston Enterprises, I've got aisle 1, I've got aisle 2, I've got aisle 3, and I use them as divisions so that at some point when it becomes too risky or volatile for those activities to be running through my holding company, I just create a separate subsidiary, a separate LLC, and I then run that business activity through that LLC, but at least I validated that activity. At least I'm monetizing at that point. At least I have a proof of concept, and it's worth me spending the money and the time and the effort to create a separate entity. That's the power of what I'm talking about, okay? Deanna, How many LLCs for a holding company? Should it just be one? It asks how many people in the LLC for a holding company. I'm sorry, can you rephrase that question, Deanna? I think you're asking how many people should be owners in the holding company. Could you reword that question so I can understand it a little better? How many people in the LLC? For a holding company, should it just be one? If I'm understanding your question, Deanna, you're probably asking me how many people are in the LLC, or how many should it be? Should it just be one person in the holding company? Not necessarily. Like my holding company, my wife and I, we both own it. So we're 50-50 partners. How many members are in the LLC? In the SS4? Well, if it's just you as the owner, it would be a single member LLC. So if it's just you owning the LLC, so when you're filling out your SS4 form, if it's just you that will own the LLC, if it's just you, then that means it's a single member LLC. If it's you and your spouse, or you and someone else, two or more, it would be a multi-member LLC. When you're filling out your SS4 form, that would be considered a single member if it's just you. In my case, my holding company is owned by me and my wife. We're considered the owner, so that's a multi-member LLC, right? But think about it. My real estate investment company and asset management company, it's an LLC, but guess what? It's a single member LLC. Why is it a single member LLC? Because me and my wife don't own it. The company we own owns it, so that would be considered a single member LLC. But a multi-member LLC owns that single member LLC. So your subsidiaries will actually be considered single member LLCs when they are wholly owned by your holding company, unless you have a partnership, okay? Which I don't want to get into the weeds of all that, but again, you have the parent company. I just wanted to share those later. When I put one member, it mentioned it would be reported as individual and reported on. Yeah, that's how it's going to be, because the LLCs is really like a pass-through disregarded entity, but that's only for tax purposes. That's for tax purposes. So when you get ready to do your taxes, your tax person will know how to do your taxes in a way that helps you minimize your tax liability, and the tax person will help make that determination. I'm not a tax person, so I don't know a whole lot of the stuff that my tax strategist and CPA tells me about, but I know enough to know that when I have a potential tax problem where I'm going to pay too many taxes, my CPA, my tax strategist, has the responsibility of helping me flesh that out and strategically work that out in a way throughout the calendar year, so that by the time I get to the end of the year, I already forecasted to know what my tax bill is. But yes, when you're filling out the SS4 form online for your holding company or any LLC, it's going to ask you, is it a single member or a multi-member? If you're the owner and that's it, you're the only owner, then it's a single member. If you have a holding company and then you're setting up another LLC and you're going to get an EIN, that's going to be considered a single member, even if your main LLC is a multi-member LLC. All right, so I hope today's show enlightened you and gave you a little more clarity on the 3 layers to a holding company. Again, if you need more resources, more information, if you want to learn in depth all the ins and outs of how to start, structure, and manage the day-to-day operations of a holding company, of divisions, of subsidiaries, if you want to learn how to leverage holding companies and this type of structure. I have an entire do-it-yourself LLC holding company kit. I have courses, mentorship, workshops. We have a lot of resources. And guess what? Outside of the resources that we have that you can buy, we have so much content on our social media page, especially our YouTube page. We teach a lot about holding companies and these types of concepts. So I appreciate you all. Thank y'all for joining today's show. Please leave a comment. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was from today's show. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube page. Of course, I want you to follow me on all other platforms, but I definitely want you to subscribe to my YouTube page, okay? We have over 12,000 subscribers, and we want to keep pushing and keep educating and keep helping people properly start and structure their holding companies, their LLCs, and their businesses. So appreciate you all. Thank you for joining the show. We will see you all tomorrow right here. Same place, same time, 12 o'clock noon Eastern on the Ramon Preston Show. Have an amazing rest